What is up? Good morning and welcome to Monday's Hangxiety. This is Club Fantasy's weekly recap show where we go over yesterday and Thursday and this week's Saturday's action and help you make the decision on when it's time to panic and when it's time to chill the fuck out. And what a wild weekend of football we had. No one better to navigate it with than my always co-host, Josh Hudson. How you doing, buddy?
Man, this had to have been one of the wildest,
Crazy.
wildest weekends of football that I have probably ever seen. And it kicked off on, it kicked off Thursday, but man, that 1:00 game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Was that something to watch?
Unexpected.
The Colts and the Vikings. Well, and that's the thing, the Vikings should have won this game. So that part wasn't really unexpected. Yeah. The fact that the Colts were up 33-0 and the Vikes came back to win, that was shit fucking wild.
and we're going to talk about it, but the fact that the Colts were winning, having lost Jonathan Taylor on the first drive of the game. If I had told you Jonathan Taylor's going down in the first drive of the game, you would have certainly bet that the Vikings were going to win 36 points. You would not have figured, or 39 points. You would have not figured that the Colts would have had 36 to go with it. So just what an absolutely bananas game. I'm now in upstate New York. I have friends in the Buffalo area. The Buffalo fans do not like that the Vikings now have the largest comeback in NFL history. They're pointing out that they beat Warren Moon and the Vikings beat Matt Ryan. So,
dude, I just love that. Here's the thing. I'm fully convinced now that Matt Ryan belongs in the Hall of Fame. And here's my reasoning here. The Hall of Fame is a museum, right? The Hall of Fame is a museum. It is about celebrating the highs and the lows. This man is now part of the two most infamous comebacks in NFL history. One in the Super Bowl and one here this past week 15. Seriously?
100%.
Dude, if I'm Matt Ryan, I'm retiring after this game. Nothing else is going my way. This is now what I'm known for. I'm out. Bye. Right off into the sunset. Become Andrew Luck. Never get heard from again. Seriously.
What just a rough outcome. The Colts' strength is supposed to be their defense, and it completely let them down. Because I won't even say in the first half of that game, the Colts' defense is kind of what carried them. The Vikings were just making dumb mistakes. It just was an ugly, stupid game, plain and simple. And then it course corrected. And there's a saying that it's existed for as long as time, but I'll always credit it to Andy over at the Fantasy Footballers. Whatever can be done can be undone. So just because you gave up that many points in one half of football, that doesn't mean you can score that exact amount of points in football in the second half. And that's kind of what I like to see happen there is we saw this insane thing, but they still gave them an entire half to undo this insane thing, and we got to see it. So that was pretty awesome. Before we dive into what Josh has just been looking forward to talk about, I'm going to run through the recap here. So as Josh mentioned, this whole thing started on a Thursday night. San Francisco's defense continues to amaze and astound. And shout out to Brock Purdy playing damn good football, getting Christian McCaffrey involved, which is happy for all fantasy owners. Also got George Kittle involved. We're going to talk more about that a little later. Saturday games, as we mentioned, Minnesota, largest comeback in NFL history. Overtime, 39-36, 33-0 lead for Indianapolis at halftime. Matt Ryan is never going to live that down. Worst game of the weekend, easily. Cleveland, Baltimore, 13-3. Deshaun Watson is starting to get it together. Browns fans have to be very happy, but Baltimore is just a flat-out train wreck.
Yeah, they apparently missed the memo that offense was on the table this week. And they just said, yeah, no, not it. Sorry. We're just going to play some defense and bad offensive football.
Yeah, with fantasy championships on the line. And then the Buffalo Bills beat out the Miami Dolphins with a Tyler Bass field goal as time expires, 32-29. What a
that was an exciting game too.
As well. That was a very cool game. And then Sunday, we're going to start with Philly holds off Chicago 25-20. We're going to talk more about that one later. Not your typical Philadelphia game, but Josh, you actually pretty much predicted the outcome of this game through the two shows I do with you every week. You pretty much called how this game was going to go, but we'll get to that in a second. New Orleans beats up on Desmond Ridder in his opening in Atlanta, 21-18. Detroit hangs on to beat the New York Jets as Zerline misses a crazy field goal, 58-yard field goal at the end of the game, 20-17. I want to come back to this after we talk about the Birds. And I know you have Zach Wilson, so we're going to get to that. But I have some clock management issues with this game I want to talk about. Pittsburgh handles business in Carolina 24-16. I have a concession to make. I don't think the Pittsburgh fantasy defense is that good, plain and simple. I've been riding these guys. They're giving
you have the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and they're giving you just no fantasy points, no top 15 finishes. It's just ugly. Jacksonville shocks the Dallas Cowboys. What a day to be an Eagles fan. What a day to be a Doug Peterson fan. Overtime, 40-34.
That's how I know Dougie P still loves him some Philly, baby. Let's go!
The only part of this that upsets me is in one league I'm in, I have Marvin Jones and DeMarcus Lawrence. When Rashawn Jenkins returned that damn kick, I was or that interception or fumble, whatever it was, I was absolutely fucking heartbroken because I needed it to I wanted either DeMarcus Lawrence to get another sack or a tackle because he had done nothing for that game, or Marvin Jones to get another touchdown. So what an ending there. That puts.
I had Rashawn Jenkins in the IDP guys invtional
with your 300
points.
With your 380 points right now, Josh. Yeah.
Mind you, I lost Cooper Kupp halfway through the season in that league.
Yeah,
I have been blown by injuries in that one.
I went in and looked. I'm going to probably cross 300. I have 2 guys going tonight, so I'm probably going to cross 300, but I'm not going to catch you. But I don't have to catch you. I just have to finish in a certain percentage there. So
yeah, I know. I'll score like 250 next week and lose. That'll be
what I'm hoping for. However, with that loss, Dallas still clinches a playoff spot because Seattle and Washington also lost. Jerick McKinnon making me look like a fucking genius in my pick 'em up articles. He gets another 2-touchdown week, and Kansas City downs Houston. What a overtime touchdown that was, 30-24. Denver beats Arizona.
Props to Houston, man. Seriously, props to Houston.
I was going to get.
They've battled with 2 of the upper echelon
teams. 2 of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, and they're hanging together with scrap heaps because their top 2 wide receivers are out. Their starting running back is out. Kudos to Lovie Smith. I don't know if he's going to keep his job next year because obviously this team is really bad, but you know what? He's got these guys fighting, and kudos to them.
As soon as I finish these games, I want to talk about Davis Mills because you say if Lovey's going to have a job next year, I want to talk about Davis Mills. Denver beats Arizona 24-15 as backup quarterbacks, but Colt McCoy did leave this game with a concussion. I did not mention, I slightly touched on it. Jonathan Taylor went out. It's a high ankle sprain. Jonathan Taylor unlikely to play the rest of the season. You can go ahead and drop him if you are surviving the fantasy playoffs with him getting you 1 point yesterday. Las Vegas wins. I've watched football. I joke about my age often. I've watched football since the late 80s, early 90s. I've never seen anything like that Las Vegas game. 30-24. If you did not see the ending, as Josh has pointed out in the notes here, a very controversial touchdown catch from Keelan Cole to even send this game. I was going to say to overtime, but it didn't go to overtime, which I'll explain in a second. But a catch to tie the game. And then for some reason, Ramondre Stevenson thought they were losing. I don't know what his thought process there was. It certainly was not a Bill Belichick-led team. Gives the ball on a Stanford band on the field play to Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers, for whatever reason, you have to remember Mac Jones is your quarterback, tries to throw a ball 25 yards backwards to Mac Jones.
Yeah, it's not like Mac Jones can throw it forward at this point.
Exactly. And fucking Chandler Jones intercepts this ball, stiff arms the soul out of Mac Jones, and runs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that'll be the angry run winner this week.
Yeah, and runs it back. And I've seen so many of these plays, but you rarely see them in a tie game. Bill Belichick teams play for overtime.
Dude, this has been like the worst coached Belichick team.
Yes.
Like, there's been so many mental errors and just bad football from this Patriots team. I honest to God, don't even think that Belichick is coaching this team right now. Like, that's really what it feels like. I saw this game dubbed lateral damage on Twitter, and I wish I knew who it was. But damn, that coinage is just chef's kiss, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, so if you want to get a real good take on this game, I urge you tune into our Wednesday show, 7 p.m. Eastern. We have a New England Patriots fan, a lifelong New England Patriots fan, literally born into the fandom, Joe Zolo, who is going to have words to share about this game. I'm
pretty sure that'll be the first half hour of the show.
Yeah, We're going to try to get
We're
to
just
your
going to
questions.
sit back and let them talk.
I may not even fill out the show sheet, Josh. I may just put, we all know what's going to happen here.
See Joe Zolo. See Joe Zolo. See
exactly.
Joe Zolo.
Dicker the kicker. Could that announcer have screamed Dicker the kicker any louder on the 17-14 win over Tennessee? Big offensive letdown in that game for yours truly. Cincinnati, what a wonderful comeback. Tampa Bay, they beat Tampa Bay 34-23. And the Giants survived Washington 20-12. There was a pass interference call where
there was
McLaurin,
two bad calls in that final drive. Like you have the Terry McLaurin illegal formation, which I saw them talking about it on Good Morning Football this morning. And like, I mean, I played receiver and defensive back in high school. And that's literally what they tell you. They teach you when you get to the line, you literally look over at the ref. Hey, am I lined up correctly? And you can see him physically going through and like nudging forward, but he doesn't really reset. He just like leans. So he's still technically offsides. And then like, he's still looking this way and then just throws the thumbs up. Not really like, and again, we don't hear the conversation. So I don't know if the ref says, yeah, you're good, but then still throws the flag, which pretty egregious if that's the case. But like awful. If you're not still looking back and saying, am I good? And I get it. He's probably trying to rush because they've got the the motion guy coming through. And if he's readjusting while the motion, that again is illegal. It's an illegal shift. It's a penalty either way. But like, I was so mad because I needed that Brian Robinson touchdown in one league.
Yeah.
But and then of course the non defensive pass interference call. And I'm just like, holy God, could that have been more obvious? Holy shit.
It was a mugging. It was a flat out mugging. And so, yeah, that one felt bad. All right. Before we get into the Eagles, and I don't want to talk too much about this because I went and looked at the stats and the stats aren't that great. Has Davis Mills played himself into any chance to compete for this job next year? Or is this a Trevor Lawrence situation? Gardner Minshew, he's out the door. They're giving.
Oh yeah, he's out the door.
Okay.
They have the number one pick. They're going to get Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, whomever they feel is the top quarterback in this class. They've made some good draft picks. This defense is playing well. Derek Stingley has been fantastic at corner. And a lot of people thought that he was a bit of a reach because of, the injuries and not really being, the guy that he was his freshman year at LSU. But like their defense is playing well. They're obviously they haven't had Mechie. Dameon Pierce looks like a gem. They have another first round pick, because of Cleveland. I believe they also have Cleveland's second round pick this year as well. So they have some premium draft capital so that they can continue to make some more moves and surround whomever they pick at number one. Yeah. So Davis Mills is not the answer. Sorry.
And you don't agree with Elixirs that they're bringing Tyrod Taylor back into the fold? No, I went and looked at his stats. So honestly, I killed my own point before I even wanted to make my point because his stats are just awful in these two games.
No, they have not been good this year at all.
The 3 touchdowns make him look really good. Obviously they've been bad this year, but I was hoping maybe in these last 2 games he had done something. And then there's of course the whole that he's losing playing time to Jeff Driscoll, the next Taysom Hill. But yeah, 3 touchdowns yesterday, but 121 passing yards, and then only.
I mean, granted, look, his top 2 wide receivers are out. Like, I mean, he's basically, at this point, he's non-rushing upside Justin Fields. Like, he's just trying to make it happen without the rushing upside. Like, it's not there. Sorry.
No. It's a really good point. Like I said, I after I looked at his numbers, it felt dumb even bringing it up because I just didn't know. I obviously have held a grudge, and I'm glad to see Trevor Lawrence succeeding now. But I've held a grudge that Gardner Minshew's job was just taken away from him. And obviously, Minshew looked like shit that second year.
Dude, Trevor Lawrence looks like the fucking truth. He has been
there's no doubting Trevor Lawrence at this point. Don't get me wrong.
Second half of the season.
But, I mean, you put Gardner
and for everybody that was writing him off at the early part of this year, like, oh, Justin Fields should have been number 1 pick, blah, blah, blah. Trevor Lawrence looks fantastic. He needed a offensive-minded head coach, not Urban fucking Meyer. And Doug Peterson is a good head coach.
And the other thing is
questionable play calling sometimes. There's questionable clock management. I can attest as an Eagles fan, but he helped Carson Wentz a ton. he can
and
do the same thing for Trevor
Lawrence. Looks the part. Like they did a lot of the Jacksonville game on Red Zone yesterday for obvious reasons. He's statuesque back there, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like if you molded what you want a 2022 NFL quarterback to look like in the pocket, that's what Trevor Lawrence looks like. And the thing is, for being this big, goofy white dude, he actually runs the ball quite well. Over 200 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns this year. So, no, I'm really liking what we're seeing out of Trevor Lawrence. But let's stop talking about these other teams, Josh, because your Philadelphia Eagles are 13-1. It's up with the Birds. Talk to us about those Eagles.
Yeah, I mentioned twice last week on our shows. I said this was a trap game for Philly. I mean, you've got obviously the big showdown this coming Saturday against Dallas on Christmas Eve. All the Micah Parsons talk about, Jalen Hurts being a system quarterback, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's really easy to get distracted and overlook Chicago. Chicago, while being a bad team this year, Justin Fields has kept them competitive. And you saw it on full display yesterday on Sunday.
So fucking good.
Dude, that sack that he evaded, like Hassan Reddick was wrapped all over him. And he just said, whoop, shook him right off. And then scampered 60 some odd yards. And I like fully on display, loved it. And yes, it was an ugly game on offense, the 2 turnovers. And I've mentioned this throughout this year. Washington gave you the blueprint on how to beat Philly. Create turnovers. When they create turnovers, that puts more pressure on the defense. What helped this defense is that Chicago's offensive line is dog shit. 2 sacks for Hassan Reddick. He could have very easily had more than that, in all honesty. That dude lived in that backfield yesterday.
Yep.
Javon Hargrave from the middle, 2 sacks. Josh Sweat on the other side of Hassan Reddick, 2 sacks. Fields was sacked 6 times for 61 yards lost. That is absurd. But he wants to run around and make plays. So that's why a lot of those lost yards come from. But A.J. Brown, 9 for 181. Devonta Smith, 5 for 126. They didn't even need Miles Sanders. And honestly, they didn't even use him in the first half of this game.
Nope.
Honestly, I think he had 1 carry by the end of the first half. It was baffling how much they were ready to just throw the football, which I didn't get because Chicago's run defense is bottom 5 in the league. It's at that point, just run the football. But this is the Konami code at quarterback. You saw it on full display in both these games, or on both sides of the football with Fields and Hurts. Jalen Hurts had 2 interceptions, 0 passing touchdowns, and was the QB1 on the week because of what he was able to do running the football. He had 3 rushing touchdowns and over 300 yards passing. Stop with this whole running quarterbacks, blah, blah, blah. They're running backs. Yeah, no, they're still quarterbacks. Just let them play football.
The thing is,
they'll grow eventually.
And watching him play, he's making some awful throws. There was a throw where he missed Kmet by a mile and what probably could have been a touchdown.
That's easy to do though when pressure's up in your face nonstop. Get this kid a competent offensive line. I think he makes more of these throws than he's missing.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. He is going to improve. You're hoping the coaching staff is the right coaching staff. Luke Getsy is a former quarterback himself, never quite to the level that Justin Fields is, but you kind of like the fact that his offensive coordinator is a D1 college football. He played for Akron. So you're hoping that you can see him play a little bit better football. But Josh, the thing that I really took away from this game is just how well you called what was going to happen. You flat out said it's a trap game. It was a trap game. You said Justin Fields is going to run all over us. Justin Fields ran all over you. That man putting that toe on that sideline broke my heart because that should have went down as one of the best runs in NFL
That was
history.
Fantastic. that was something. Yeah. But no, and even David Montgomery getting involved. Let's not, I'll give him props. He had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. And I would have faded Montgomery to the moon because this Eagles run defense has been good since they've added Joseph and Sue and got Jordan Davis back. And really outside of Fields, they held their own. I think, you take away most of Fields' scrambles, they only gave up 60, 70 yards rushing. Yeah. I'll take that.
I say Montgomery looked good when they needed him to look good, but Philly actually played him pretty well kind of in between the 20.
Yeah, I mean, and it definitely helps that, Chicago has 0 in terms of wide receivers, so Bradbury and Slay really weren't tested. Yeah, but I knew they were going to try to get Kmet involved because really he's their top target at that point. He led the team in targets, if I'm not mistaken. He had 4 catches, only for 26 yards. But this is what Philly does. Philly is good at stopping tight ends. And we did that with only 2 active safeties going into this game. Like, we have been ravaged by injuries. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out going into Saturday against Dallas, because I don't believe we get Gardner Johnson back. Reed Blankenship was out for this game, who is his replacement. Yep. We did just re-sign Anthony Harris. So I'm sure he'll probably make an appearance. And
I thought he was playing quarterback for the Ravens. No, I'm joking.
That's Anthony Brown.
I know. Our buddy Mega Brick here with the first Monday anxiety.
Monday miracle
of the day. Yeah, the Monday anxiety of the week. So full PPR, he's down 13.5 points. He has Allen Lazard left to play. What do you think, Josh?
I think there's definitely a chance. The way that this offense is looking right now is that they're going to establish the run with A.J. Dillon and sprinkle in Aaron Jones at this point. And then they're going to let Lazard control the clock and get a lot of these 8 to 13-yard receptions to kind of move the chains and keep the drive alive. And then they're going to look for Christian Watson in the end zone. Like that seems to be what this. Yeah. Now, I will say what gives me a little pause, because I want to see how he gets worked back in, because Romeo Doubs was essentially the wide receiver 1 on this team before he got hurt. And then all of a sudden we see, the ascension of Christian Watson and, the god that he's become in scoring touchdowns. But Lazard is just kind of hung in there. Like, this isn't like the big touchdown season Lazard that maybe we thought we were getting.
Well, we certainly thought we were getting it in those first 6 weeks.
But how does Doubs fit back in here? Because, Lazard plays a really solid big slot. So if you've got Doubs and Watson on the outside and Lazard in the middle, and we've seen, when Randall Cobb is healthy, Cobb is, kind of moving the chains a little bit in the slot. If that role goes more towards Lazard, and if this is a PPR league, I think he gets 13.5 quite easily.
And so I went back and kind of looked what the Rams give up, and they've given this up to wide receivers quite a bit over their last few games. Because if you go back and look, both Seattle wide receivers put in work on them. Both New Orleans wide receivers put in work on them. Both Arizona wide receivers put in work. And that's all since week 10. So that's kind of the Rams team you're running into right now, this beat up and bad Rams team. So, and
Aaron Donald's already been ruled out too. So there's that aspect of it.
There you go. Yeah. And it's shocking to me they keep rolling him out and they haven't just we're not playing him anymore.
Yeah, just shut him down.
Because,
no, and honestly, I think that's more Aaron Donald and his competitive fire more than anything.
One more for fun here before I let you tell the folks about Manscaped. But if Ben Skoranek scores 30 tonight and knocks our boy George out of the playoffs, he's done with fantasy football. I think I'd be done with fantasy football. On that
George, I'm right there with you, buddy. I think if any Rams wide receiver puts up 30 tonight, I would die. Like, wow.
I could see Van Jefferson. Now, here's the thing I forgot to mention with the last comment and with the kind of the Rams wide receiver thing. I need Baker and Allen Lazard to have the worst fucking games of their lives to survive.
Well, the last time Baker played Green Bay, he threw 4 interceptions. So
what I'm kind of hoping for is 2 interceptions and they pull them and put one of the backups in the game. That's what I'm hoping for. I doubt it happens. That's what I'm hoping for. We're going to get to the rest of your comments here in just a second. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and let Josh talk about our good friends over at Manscaped.
Yeah, this episode of Club Fantasy's Monday Hangxiety brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for those family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the ultimate men's hygiene bundle, the Performance Package. Luckily enough, because of this whole agreement, Ryan and myself were sent this Performance Package because Manscaped wants us to try things out, and obviously they want us to talk about the product with personal experiences. And they don't want us to sell something that sucks. And quite honestly, I wouldn't sell something that sucks.
Yeah.
But Manscaped doesn't suck. It's pretty fucking awesome. That performance package includes the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver groin deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, the Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all of your goodies. My favorite things from this are easily the Weed Whacker ear and nose trimmer and the groin deodorant. I run around a lot at work. It's outside for the most part. it tends to sweat. And granted, I'm wearing a hoodie and sweatpants today because Florida decided to actually like learn what seasons are.
Well, I was gonna say, I pointed out that Josh, I wanted to point out that you're in Florida. So when you're
and it's always hot in Florida more often than not,
Exactly.
except this week when Florida decides to go on a week-long bender and it's in the 50s. But you know, they're getting with the times, just without the snow. But yeah, the deodorant is great. Obviously, as you get older, most of you probably know hair starts growing places, and more often than not, it actually gets darker. And people and guys that have mustaches, that nose hair starts growing. It sucks. So the trimmer itself, it's cleans it up, makes everything nice and more comfortable for you as a guy. You know, the blades on the trimmers are waterproof, so it's so easy to clean. It helps reduce nicks and cuts and ingrown hairs. Can't say anything bad about this product, in all honesty, Ryan.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have not a negative thing to say about it, and I think you've all watched our show enough to know that if there's something bad to say, me, Josh, and Joe are going to say it. So.
Yeah, we're pretty blunt and honest, in all honesty.
And honestly, we wouldn't have done these reads for as many weeks as we have. We
Correct.
hope some of you guys have used this code, and if you have, please, if you're liking the product, let us know, man. That's cool.
Yeah, join over 5 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer just for you. Head over to manscaped.com after checkout or during checkout. Enter the promo code Club Fantasy. Save 20% and get free shipping. You're in the holiday season. Last week, I mean, even if you expedite shipping, maybe they'll take a little bit off. I don't know.
Yeah.
But get it before Christmas. White elephant gifts, Secret Santa, those types of things. Great for it. Once again, go to manscaped.com. Use promo code Club Fantasy at checkout. Save 20%. Get free shipping at manscaped.com.
Josh, before we get into our next section, which was a perfect section, I want to quickly jump down to our buddy Elixirs here. Where would we consider taking Calvin Ridley this upcoming season? So redraft PPR, Josh, where is Calvin Ridley going in your draft with this new and improved Trevor Lawrence?
I was about to say, the way that Trevor Lawrence is playing right now, I think he's definitely top 24.
Okay.
I think he's definitely top 24. I would not... I can't put him in the top 12. I know Christian Kirk has kind of been floating in that range, and obviously we've seen what Zay Jones has done of late.
Yeah.
But Ridley's barely played football in 2 years.
Because the expectation, Marvin Jones is gone. So
yeah.
Ridley is taking Marvin Jones' spot.
Correct.
They've, for at least the last 2 or 3 games, they've all been involved, but Kirk hasn't been on his highs while Zay Jones has been on his highs.
Correct, yeah. And that's what this offense is going to be. I mean, exactly. You know, they're going to throw the football.
Well, it's reminiscent of the Doug Peterson Philly offense. You didn't really have that. So.
Exactly. And, you know, we never really had like a true number one in Philly. We had, you know, the skeleton of Alshon Jeffrey, but none of these guys ever topped 1,000 yards. So they're going to spread the football around. They're going to have a quality tight end. I would like to think they'll bring Evan Ingram back. He's played really well for them. And by the way, Ryan, top 10 tight end this week.
Very wrong this week.
Out there.
I understand.
Yeah, okay. That's all right. You'll get your cuts in later.
I'm not the only one who was wrong about a tight end.
But yeah, I mean, just the way that, and obviously, you know, when you're doing these rankings, you're doing the rankings with the idea that everybody's healthy and plays a full season up to their potential. So I think that going into, I'm okay drafting him in the top 24. I would say he's very easily a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside because of what we've seen from Calvin Ridley, and obviously what we've seen is capable, or what this offense is capable of.
Yeah. That's exactly what I would say. It's going to come down to roster construction for me, like what round I'm looking at him, but I would be comfortable with him as my wide receiver 2. But for me, that could be quite late in the draft because everybody who knows me knows I'm taking Travis Kelce in round 1. My next 3 picks are running backs. And then I'm taking, so my first wide receiver usually in round 4 or 5. So for me, that puts Calvin Ridley, if I can get him in the 6 to 7 range, and when you initially asked this question, 7 was the number that came to my head. So I'm thinking round 7 as my team's wide receiver 2. And round 7 is probably my wide receiver 3, unless some quarterback falls to the 6 like Jalen Hurts. But I would say if I could get him as my wide receiver 2, 6, 7, that's about where I'm taking Calvin Ridley next year. So that's a wonderful question. As we see Trevor Lawrence improve, it's going to get better. And then I'm going to quickly run through George's things here because George had some things. George, first and foremost, I don't have the comment pulled up real quick, but you said you love this show and we love your participation.
Appreciate that.
So we're glad to have you here, buddy. So glad to see Saquon Barkley back to being Saquon. Last drive, just turning out 3 back-to-back first downs. He looked great.
Yeah, he looked really good running.
Yeah, that's what you want to see. This is a question I think a lot of people are going to be asking this week, Mike Evans. And this is a phenomenon, Josh, that I pointed out on not our last show, but the one before that. These big first quarters, and then these players just completely falling off. And it's
and that's the thing. I don't even know that it's Mike Evans. This offense just sucks.
Tom Brady looks
Byron
bad.
Leftwich without Bruce Arians, god awful. Just terrible. I like this offense is so out of sorts. They can't run the football effectively. And when you're relying on a 45-year-old arm to consistently throw you to victories, you get a 6-8 season. It is what it is.
Yeah, but like I said, it's just interesting, this phenomenon we are seeing, because I brought it up with Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce in these last couple of weeks, where they have these like monster first quarters, and we're like, oh, they're about to go to the moon, and they certainly do not go to the moon. I agree with everything about this comment, but I'm gonna throw some shade on Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow pulls it off yesterday. Played he and Higgins. You cannot doubt Joe Burrow. And I'm going to talk a little bit about whether or not we should be doubting T. Higgins a little bit later too. And that Joe Burrow hangnail was absolutely disgusting. However,
as most hangnails are.
Yes. However, if you did not see the bailout that happened for Joe Burrow in this game, where on fourth down, this dude scrambled back like 25 yards and got completely saved by a defensive holding. It was one of the worst scrambles I've ever seen. It was just an atrocious play, and he got completely bailed out by the refs on a defensive holding. This could be a very different story for Joe Burrow. Obviously, they pulled the game out, so it didn't matter. So I have my issues with Joe Burrow. And Anthony, I'm going to get your comment up here before we get into our next section, because it works out perfectly. He lost 2 playoff matchups to Zay Jones yesterday. Yeah, you certainly weren't expecting that out of a team that needed to start Zay friggin' Jones. And we're going to pour one out for you, but we're going to pour one out for quite a few people. Josh added a wonderful segment to this show. Pour one out, because
I thought it was pretty appropriate, seeing as how, you know,
so
obviously the theme of this show obviously is hangovers and alcohol and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, we're in the playoffs, and, you know, obviously we're hyping up certain players, and then people just come in and lay some fucking duds. So, you know what? We're pouring one out for the homies on this one.
Josh, take it over. You did the segment, and I like leaving things up to you in the show. So take it over.
Yeah, I mean, just off the rip, I was trying to focus more so on players that were giving us less than 10 fantasy points, because I feel like in a normal week, and I say normal because I feel like the top 36 wide receivers this week all top 14 points. But in most weeks, 10 points is a pretty solid barometer, right? Chris Olave, 8.3 points. Jamal Williams, 3.3 points. The Knight Rider himself, Zonovan Knight, who I said would suck this week against
the Detroit. That was a great
stout
call.
Run defense, 2.3 points. Deonta Foreman, 10 carries, 9 yards, 0.9 points. Miles Sanders, 42 rushing yards, minus 13 receiving yards, a lost fumble, 0.9 fantasy points. Remember when he told you not to draft him in fantasy? He had week 15 in the first week of the playoffs. He was
thinking about the fantasy playoffs.
That premonition is next level. Dalton Schultz, 2 catches, 15 yards.
What the fuck?
Hollywood Brown, 4 catches, 19 yards. Though I don't really put all that on him. That
one's predictable.
I mean,
yep.
That one I felt was more predictable, obviously, with the backup quarterback, and then Trace.
This next one, though,
coming in. Greg Dulcich.
What the fuck?
1 catch, 11 yards. And the backup tight end scores a touchdown.
What?
Fuck you,
just
Nathaniel
Dalton
Hackett.
Schultz. Dalton Schultz, a backup tight end. Peyton Hendershot, a rookie backup, caught a touchdown. So,
Joe said, fade Josh Jacobs, play Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams responds, 4 catches, 28 yards. Yeah. Justin fucking Herbert. One of the worst pass defenses in the league. 313 passing yards and a fucking dart to Mike Williams on the final drive. Oh my God, that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was
2
so
interceptions,
good.
no touchdowns, 8.72 fantasy points. What? Oops. Rashad White, 38 yards, 1 catch, 5 yards, 5.3 fantasy points. Brandon Ayuk, I think most of us kind of saw this one coming. 2 catches, 19 yards, 3.9 fantasy points. Obviously, definitely pour one out for Jonathan Taylor. Only 2.3 points before he got injured. And those points came on a reception, not even rushing.
Yeah.
Ouch. Nick Chubb, 99 yards. Fantastic. No touchdown, 9.9 fantasy points. Amari Cooper, this was a home game. This was a home game. You were supposed to go off. Touchdown to Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yep.
4 catches, 58 receiving yards, 9.8 fantasy points. Staying in the same game, the tight ends. David Njoku, 3 catches, 28 yards, 5.8 fantasy points. And Mark fucking Andrews.
Another one you called. You had a really good week on your calls last week. I hope you put some of these on the Wednesday show sheet.
31 receiving yards, 6.1 fantasy points. I fucking hate tight ends.
Yeah. Rough week. Jawan Johnson went bananas again. Some of these tight ends did things predictably. Obviously, you were right about Evan Ingram. Jawan Johnson had a really good week, but the Dulcich one breaks my heart. Honestly, the Dalton Schultz season has broke my heart. George, I'm going to get to your question here towards the end of the show, but yes, to answer your question. So we're going to keep rocking through, Josh. Obviously, we start the show every week. This week, we had a lot to kick in, but we call it the hangover, the biggest head scratcher of the week. And Josh so eloquently was going to let me take Justin Herbert. For those who don't watch our Wednesday show, Justin Herbert, and actually I talked about this last week on our show, I think maybe. Justin Herbert was my QB1 for the week. I thought he was going to go nuts against Tennessee. I would have started him over every single quarterback in fantasy football. The 300 yards looks nice. This offense looked awful, especially in the first half. Tennessee did what they were supposed to do. They controlled the clock with Derrick Henry against one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. Derrick Henry handled business. Eckler, this sounds awful, but when Eckler went out early in the game, Josh Kelly scored a touchdown. I was like, oh man, they're going to be throwing the ball even more. It defies logic how bad Brandon Staley fucks things up for me in fantasy football. So
I've been saying all year, Tennessee is like a bad, good team. They're the best bad team. Like this team is so, I don't even know. Like that interception, like the tip back and like that was impressive.
That was crazy.
Like, and Mike Vrabel can put together some really good defensive game plans. He really can. And then there are some weeks where he's just flat out overmatched, like he was against Philly. And I mean, you would think getting Mike Williams back, Keenan Allen back, like the whole gang is back together.
Yep.
And this offense had no answer.
Sputtered.
Like just nothing. And literally a fucking field goal in the last 10 seconds of this game was the difference. And Tannehill left this game with an ankle injury. He was not playing at 100%.
And then came back in, but still.
They should have blown out Tennessee.
Well, there was even a play where he rushed for something on that bad ankle where they broke his back, pushing him into the end zone. Just
Jesus,
an absolutely
so
crazy game. And then the last one I'm going to hit on, Josh, before I let you get to yours. Why is Justin Jackson a thing? We're already dealing with the headache.
I saw that red zone carry and I just facepalmed. What?
We are already dealing with the headache of the Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift thing. And DeAndre Swift finally gets loose in the passing game this week with 9 targets, 5 catches, 23 yards. But instead, we're giving Justin Jackson 6 fucking carries in this game. He did nothing with them. He caught a ball. He has scored 2 touchdowns this season. Come on. It's bad enough to deal with a 2 running back committee where both running backs are very, very good. Justin Jackson doesn't deserve time in this rotation. I understand there are Justin Jackson truthers out there from his time in Los Angeles. I'm not with that, and I don't understand why he is being used as often as he is. He is a 1 to 2 touch per game guy, and we got to keep this ball in the hands of the studs who got people into the fantasy championship, plain and simple. That's my head scratchers of the week. I was very angry about that. And Josh, I'm gonna let you take yours because I is it with these? No, it's not these. It's later on. I'm gonna bitch about the Jets clock.
Well, I'll start with Matt Ryan. I touched on this earlier. I firmly believe this man belongs in the Hall of Fame because the Hall of Fame is a museum, and you cannot tell the story of the history of the NFL without talking about the greatest postseason collapse of all time and the greatest single season comeback of all time. And Matt Ryan was the opposing quarterback in both of them.
Yeah.
Flat out, this man just needs to ride off into the sunset. You are done. You got nothing. Here I thought Jeff Saturday playing on a Saturday would be good. And you know what? It started great. But this man and this team is 7-11. They cannot close.
At this point, you have to fire everybody.
This is how many weeks in a row now they've come out with an impeccable first half game plan, and then just say, oh, we're just going to wing it for the final 30 minutes of football. Like, what? It baffles. And I understand you have a literal first-time play caller. You have a literal first-time interim head coach. There's a chance these guys don't know what they're doing, but you cannot convince me that the people coaching and calling plays in the first half of the game are the same people coaching and calling plays in the second half. It's mind-boggling.
It's beating on a dead horse for sure, but clearly they are not very good at making adjustments because
God almighty.
You can't. They obviously are excellent at game planning, and they're seeing things clearly that other NFL teams aren't seeing for their game planning and their tape watching. But when it comes to in-game adjustments, there are some issues there. So.
That's awful. And next one I'll hit on. Dallas being Dallas. God, I love this.
I was going to say, your head scratchers this week have been very fun.
Oh, man. Cowboys fans want to give us shit because we barely beat Houston on a short week. They have to go to overtime to beat Houston. Mind you, we smoked Jacksonville, and they fucking lose to the Jaguars in overtime. There are 4 quarterbacks in the NFL right now that average 1 or more interceptions per game. Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan,
obviously,
Davis Mills, and Dak Prescott. This is uncharacteristic of Dak Prescott. He threw 2 picks in this game. Now, granted, the last one in overtime, I do not blame him for that pick at all. Like, he put that ball quite literally where only his wide receiver could get it. Tip pass, Rashawn Jenkins, hell of a play. Hats off to him. They're supposed to have a good defense. This team never should have let the Jaguars back into this game to even remotely force overtime.
Their defense looks like Micah Parsons and no one else right now.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we've been saying for 2 years, Trayvon Diggs is overrated.
Yep.
The guy, like, quite literally had the most interceptions in the league last year and gave up the most receiving yards. Like, this isn't you have to take the bad with the good. Be good. It's not hard if you're good.
Yeah.
Straight up. And everything else is just falling apart right now. This team is trending in the wrong direction. I understand. They won 4 games in a row before this. Fantastic. You blew out a Minnesota Vikings team. Okay, cool. Their point differential this year is +2.
Yeah.
+2. They give up points. Like, they're winning close games. You get them in a close game, they're making comebacks. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. The Vikings are a fraud. And you know what? So are the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm 1,000% here for it. And I truly hope I'm not jinxing this because we play them Saturday, but still.
Well, statistically, if you guys beat them Saturday, there's a chance those 2 frauds face each other in the first round of the playoffs too. So
no, I think Dallas is pretty much locked into the 5 seed.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you've got the Giants and I believe Washington right now.
Oh, yeah,
also in that
point.
final spot.
Yeah,
but like,
you're right.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to have like collapse.
Or Minnesota would have to collapse. But
yeah, and I don't see that happening because the only way that the Central or the North winner is getting in is by winning the division.
Is winning the division.
And
absolutely.
Minnesota's winning the division. So, but yeah, and then the last one. The refs in this Patriots Raiders. I don't know how you can literally watch that replay. There's literally a still frame of Keelan Cole's foot on the white of the end zone. That foot was out of bounds, and yet you say there's not enough evidence to overturn that touchdown catch. Are you fucking kidding me?
I think the bigger problem I have with this is why is that picture the best picture we have? We are in an age of technology where we should be able to have cameras on every white line in the league. And it's like they don't want that. And if it's just the end zone, that's where we need to have it. We should not be having to have this debate to begin with. When I saw that was the only view, and I don't remember who was doing the call, but they brought up that it was not irrefutable. You could argue because of the weird 46-degree angle that you could argue that it wasn't actually on the white. And I agree, Josh, the picture shows it was on the white.
If his foot wasn't out of bounds, you know what? Neither was Justin Fields when he was running for a touchdown. Like, that's how I feel about it. Because that was probably outside of the final non-defensive pass interference call in the Sunday night game. That was the most egregious call because that was quite. Both these calls quite literally game changers because they happened towards the end of the games. Like, I don't get it. I sincerely do not. And what makes this call worse, they went and replayed this. You can't you can't go and replay and overturn a no call DPI. You can on a touchdown because every single score is reviewable. And you see that. You see his foot on the white, out of bounds, and not a call. Baffling. Just baffling.
And George, we all 100% agree. Jacoby Myers, though, I think we're more blaming Bill Belichick because how is your team this undisciplined right now, or Steve Belichick, or whoever the hell's fault it was? It was not. Bill Belichick.
I'll give Myers credit. Him and Stevenson, like they both owned up to it post game. Like they were like, look, trying to be a hero, and I get that. Nobody wants to settle for overtime. You want to go out and you want to win the game. And I can respect that competitive spirit, but at the same token, like sometimes you got to live to fight another day.
It's just such an improbable thing that you're going to score. Like, I understand you witnessed the Miami Miracle literally in your face, but you don't need to try to relive it. We're just going to keep moving on with the show sheet here. Josh, Morning Mimosas. I'm going to let you take the lead on this one as well. So
we're going Morning Mimosas or shot of espresso?
Oh, did I jump too far? Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped too far down the sheet. No, we are definitely doing shot of espresso. And these are the great performances from yesterday and this weekend that got the juices flowing. Josh, go to it.
Hey, Dougie P, baby.
Yeah.
Dougie P. Doug Peterson with the statement win over Dallas. Don't look now. The Jaguars are only a game behind Tennessee. And don't forget, the Jaguars beat the Titans. And they also play again in Week 18. That could very well end up being for the AFC South Division Championship. If the Jaguars keep on rolling and their next two games are very winnable, I believe they play the Jets. Let me go back to it. Hang on. They play the Jets and Houston, I think.
George, just to answer your question, I don't think they're completely eliminated. They need a lot of things to break their way. They no longer hold their own fate at 7-7.
Correct. Yeah. And the Jets are kind of in the same boat. Like the Jets have to win the next three games, but they still need help to get in. Mm-hmm. The Patriots are kind of in the same boat. But going back to the Jags, they're at the New York Jets next week and at Houston on New Year's Day before finishing the season at home against Tennessee. Like, these are very winnable games for the Jaguars. The Jets game, I think, will be interesting. Obviously, we know the Jets have a really good defense, but the Jags right now, their offense is clicking. Yeah. And I'm rooting for Peterson. I still think, like, he needed to go in Philly. But look, you bring a title to that town, you're beloved forever, and that's how I feel about Doug Peterson right now. So I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for the Jags. I'm rooting for Trevor Lawrence, and I really do want to see them do well. Like I just pulled off a trade for Trevor Lawrence in one dynasty league. I've got him in another. Let's fucking go, baby.
He looks good. Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Trevor Lawrence in dynasty is a franchise changing, even in a single QB. There was a guy last year, Josh, I made fun of him on this show, who ended up giving me what turned into the 101 for Trevor Lawrence. And we made fun of him, and it wasn't the best trade at the time. I turned that 101 into Kenneth Walker and another pick. The long and short of it is that guy turned his team around, made the playoffs, and is going to get to the second round of the playoffs on the back of Trevor Lawrence over these last 4 weeks. So
that's how you do it, man.
Absolutely. So even though trading the 101 for Lawrence may not have been the right call, I guarantee you he thinks it's the right call right now when he went from being the worst team in the league last year to now in the second round of the playoffs. Exactly.
Yep. Exactly.
Josh, keep going.
Deontay fucking Johnson. You talked about it last week that Mitchell Trubisky is apparently the key that unlocks the potential of Deontay Johnson.
Yes, he is.
What? I'll be the only person ever that says this. God bless Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, you're definitely the only person outside of Mentor, Ohio, where he is from, who is
10 targets, 10 receptions, 98 yards, another 2 rushing yards, 20 fantasy points in PPR yesterday. At this point, I just want a Deontay Johnson touchdown in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, no shit.
You get as good as he has been, over the last few seasons, and really he's been good this year. I mean, the drops, it is what it is. get this man in the end zone. Don't let him put up a goose.
And the drops aren't even that bad statistically. If you go and look, I thought they were bad, but I was doing some research for an article I was writing. They're really not that bad.
It's just they're. I mean, again, it's times. Well, it's inopportune times, but also like you go back a couple years when that's all he did was drop passes, and it's on everybody's mind. So everybody, when they see Deontay Johnson drop a pass, is like, oh, this guy sucks. Why did we ever hype him up? Like it's
he's not even in the top 10 of drops. He's not even in the top 10 of drops in the NFL right now. So
he's not. And drops are I don't
overrated.
Unless it's like this. If you're dropping 10 out of like 50 targets, yeah, that's a problem. You're dropping 10 out of 150, that's not a problem. Exactly. My opinion, I'm sorry. And finally,
your guy.
I was hyping this guy up in the offseason, the number 3 in this offense, going 3 wide. Man, he waits till week 15 when I've probably given up on him in most leagues.
And everybody else has.
16 targets, 10 catches, 157 yards, and a touchdown. Admittedly, a lot of my hype on Osborne was that Thielen wouldn't make it through the whole season at 33 years old or whatever he is. And Thielen, for his credit, he's played most of the year. But damn, man, it was good to see Osborne ball out the way that he did. And I'm sure this doesn't happen if they don't need to mount a 33-0 comeback, but still.
But it also gives a show of his potential because he was a rookie last year and he's young.
No, second year last year.
Second year last year. Okay. But regardless, you like to see it. I'm going to start with Ramondre Stevenson. So if you guys tuned in last week, I was shitting on Ramondre Stevenson and T. Higgins as in week 15 starts. And I did it again on Wednesday and I did it in all my DMs. I am very consistent with my messaging. You guys will never get 2 stories from me. As the week started to turn and they announced Damian Harris wasn't going to play, and then he ended up only being listed as questionable and he ended up playing, I think. Regardless, when they announced that, everything was trending in the right direction for Stevenson. And this Raiders defense, you wanted to pick on this Raiders defense. And so I DM'd people who had asked me, and I said, I'm turning the corner on Stevenson. And I put him back into all of my lineups where I needed him. 172 yards, 9.1 yards per carry, and a touchdown on a bum ankle. My goodness.
Ramondre Stevenson. The Raiders run defense is.
That's how bad the Raiders run defense is, but that is how good Ramondre Stevenson is. Yeah, he is a top 20 running back this season.
I will say I sat him in a couple leagues because, he only logged the one practice. Mm-hmm. And it was basically like, all right, I gotta choose between a guy that's playing at 1:00 or, risk it for the biscuit, so to speak. And, in some of these, like, they're must wins. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to play it safe and I'll take the floor and hope some other guys pop. Luckily, it did not cost me.
Yeah.
So I lucked out on that one. But yeah. And I again, it's, when you're answering start sit questions, everybody wants to know it's, can I start T. Higgins? Can I start Ramondre? And it's like, we're educated guessing. That's what we're doing as fantasy analysts, right?
And I think those two are very good points where the Patriots were tight-lipped about running backs. I pointed that out on our Wednesday show. And then T. Higgins was supposed to be healthy last week.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if you want to start him, because, again, you understand the upside and you know how good he is as a player, you also have to understand that this is the risk. You are risking this. Like, it's it's the boom or bust. That's why we play best ball, right?
Yeah. Though most of my losses this week are in best ball, and I think I'm out of all of the underdog stuff. And then
4-eyed kind of did me in this week, and I'm not happy.
Oh, I did great in 4-eyed. That's my only best ball I did well. And then because I have to,
I fully expected you to. And I have a rebuttal for this. So go ahead.
And I'm glad you do. But I just want to go back to the quote of the week 14 Monday Hangxiety show. I don't give a flying fuck about George Kittle's strength of schedule. You cannot play and trust George Kittle. My guy goes out there, gets not 1, but 2 tutties from the backup quarterback. And Josh and I are good friends. I was texting him immediately on both of those touchdowns. What a game for George Kittle. I will forever trust the schedule. If you followed our show for any minute of any time, all I do is talk about strength of schedule. It has bit me in the ass far more than it has been great for me. But guess what? This week it was great for me.
Here's my rebuttal, okay? Much like many of us who tune into this show or any other recap shows or, immediately after games, this show is emotional, right?
Yeah.
We're reacting, and sometimes we're pissed. And sometimes when you're pissed, logic goes out the window. I understand that Seattle was a cake matchup. Second most fantasy points allowed to the tight end position heading into Thursday night's game. I'm sure they're either still number 2 or potentially even number 1.
They're number 1 after the Dulcich dud, I bet.
Fair enough. Well, they did allow the one tight end.
Oh, that's right. So versus the tight end.
Right. So I would say this is what I will preface. Don't ask me for fantasy advice on a Monday.
That's a good point.
Don't ask me for fantasy advice on a Monday. I'm reacting, okay?
Especially not after an Eagles win or loss. He's emotional.
Fair enough. And here's the thing. I'm a fan just like you and everybody else. That's what we do. Like, we react. I don't have, I haven't gone through and looked at all the numbers and the matchups. I don't usually do that until Wednesday. Sometimes Tuesday if I'm lucky. So, I go back and I look at the trends and stuff. And quite honestly, before this game, what's George Kittle done all year?
Almost
I think
nothing.
one good game.
And certainly over the last
game.
5 games. Yeah.
Yeah. So. One good game. And, the last couple games where, he's had Brock Purdy hasn't used him.
Nope.
Now, obviously, Debo being out, that opens up an opportunity. And we talked about how this wasn't a good matchup for Brandon Ayuk. So, yeah, there was potential for George Kittle. But it's like you're going into the playoff. And you know what? If you made the playoffs with George Kittle as your starting tight end, bravo, because he ain't done fucking shit all year.
Well, agree, but neither has any other tight end not named Kelsey.
I mean, I get that. And it's one of those things where it's like, at this point, you're banking on talent, that the talent supersedes, right?
100%.
Like, the talent will get you by in bad matchups, and you hope that the talent takes advantage of the great ones, right? But it's also like, if you're riding the talent and you're riding it through all these ups and, peaks and valleys, you're hoping that you're guessing properly.
Yeah.
With these bad matchups, because the moment that you try to stream and you bench a talented player in a bad matchup,
they're heartbroken.
And then they go off.
Yep.
And you're like, well, fuck. And like, this is the kind of shit that happens.
Well, and you're 100% right. And let's remember, this whole debate, you touched on the emotional thing. This whole debate last week was Evan Ingram versus George Kittle. And Evan Ingram was not a wrong answer like I would have accused him of being. So this is just sickening.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. The Zay Jones, I would have benched DJ. I did bench DJ Moore in almost every league where I could afford to bench him. The Ramondre Stevenson thing, that was a gut call. The Zay Jones thing, nobody saw that shit coming.
3 touchdowns is, that's excessive. I mean, you could talk like, and again, and I think I answered a couple of these questions on Saturday during our Start Sit show. Like, Zay Jones is going against, realistically, Trayvon Diggs most of the game, right?
Yeah.
What does Trayvon Diggs do?
He
gives up long touchdowns. Yep. He bites. He tries to make the big play and ultimately gives up the big play. He's the ultimate, the high risk, high reward.
Yeah, he didn't give up all 3 of those, but I think he did give up the very first big one. So
there you go. And that's all it takes. It just takes the one. And you know what? If Zay Jones ends with 1 touchdown, you're happy.
You're ecstatic.
You're happy. Yeah, absolutely. You're ecstatic. But the way that Zay Jones is playing right now, it's really hard to bench him. They play the Jets next week. He's going to see a lot of Sauce Gardner. I'm okay with benching Zay Jones this week.
So
that's the only bit of fantasy advice you're getting on a Monday from me.
in my home league, I make the bottom 4 teams play for the first pick next year.
Okay.
Because they were just all terrible. And the one guy has had the worst season, won the championship last year, but basically sold his future to win the championship last year. Awful team this year. Fucking starts Zay Jones in the first game of this bracket and is now playing for the first pick next week. But now, do you start Zay Jones against Sauce Gardner?
Nope. Not doing it. Well, and then the following week they get Houston, and we've seen how Houston plays. Now, I will say they did put Derek Stingley Jr. on IR, so his season is done. We saw Juju go out 10 catches, 88 yards this past week. So I still think that in the event that they want to play like they're going to sling it, I think that's championship week, Travis Etienne is going to be a top 5 running back. That I will call right now. Houston is dog shit against the run, and we saw what the Chiefs, who can't run the football very well, did against them between McKinnon and Pacheco. So Zay Jones in the next couple weeks, let's pump the brakes. But yeah.
What about KJ Osborne in the next couple of weeks? No. Aggressively shakes his head.
No. Look, in my best ball leagues, I was targeting KJ Osborne.
That's kind of what you
to me, he was a best ball guy. And really, he's had one big week, and that's it. Like, don't get hyped about this. They're not going to be down 33-0 in the next 2 weeks.
And that's fair, but he was actually decent next week. I'm really saying this to defend. Excuse me, he was decent last week, and I'm really saying this to defend my take later on because he's going to be in my deep waivers.
Well, and that's fair. I mean, I get that. I mean, anytime somebody pops for 30 some odd fantasy points, they deserve to be rostered.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean they deserve to be starting the next week.
There you go. All right, Josh.
Again, I haven't looked at the schedule, and I don't know who the Vikings play, so there's that.
We'll get into it. Yeah, Josh, it's morning mimosas. We got that tingly feeling that something's coming up great in the next week or two. Go at it.
What I really tried to do with these was look a little bit more towards like next year.
That's kind of what we kind of had to,
because I mean, you're down in the next couple games, but like I'll highlight Juwan Johnson. I mean, we've talked about this guy throughout the season. He's had some peaks and valleys. He's had a couple multi-touchdown games. He scored 7 touchdowns this season. He's a top 10 fantasy tight end because of those touchdowns. He's essentially having that like Jonnu Smith year from like 4 or 5 years ago,
exactly,
where he has like 400 yards and 8 touchdowns, and everybody's like, oh, this is the next big thing because he's so athletic, blah blah blah, this and that. Well, Juwan Johnson is one of these wide receiver turn tight ends to take advantage of matchups. That's exactly what he's doing. He only has 55 targets on the year, 35 receptions. So if you can do the math, he's catching 20% of his balls or touchdowns. Like, this is what he's doing right now, and for a bad offense, for one guy to have 7 touchdowns, maybe they should start using them more. I don't know. Call me fucking crazy.
And this isn't an apt comparison to Dawson Knox or Robert Tonyan because those were good offenses. He is doing this in an absolute shit offense. So.
Yeah, I think depending on how the Saints off season plays out, I think you could be looking at somebody that probably will end up being dubbed a sleeper tight end in Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to be the quarterback. I don't know if they bring back Andy Dalton. I don't know clearly Jameis Winston isn't coming back. I mean, he couldn't even get the job back from a bad quarterback.
I was going to say, the fact that they have not played him again means he is.
Yeah, exactly. So. But this just further proves my point. Teams need to start utilizing mismatches in their offense. Juwan Johnson, a wide receiver turned tight end, is a mismatch in an offense.
Yeah.
Start using them, people. It's not hard.
And we're going to see it more and more in the NFL. So.
God, I hope so. God, I hope so. And I'll keep the train rolling here with I'm going to give some props to Zach Wilson.
Yes.
And I'll especially give you some props here, Ryan, because when we made the graphic last week with Mike White as your stream of the week, and then all of a sudden they rule out Mike White, and you said, you know what? I'm doubling down. Zach Wilson, stream of the week. This offense, Lions defense just gives up points.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what?
Good luck.
Shit. I don't care how good the matchup is. Zach Wilson's that bad. You know what? 317 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, when you really dive into the numbers, 35.3% of his pass attempts were off target. That's actually worse than his worst game this year.
Yeah.
Like, not great, but I will say this kid, when he goes back to throw the football, he is not worried. He is like that final play where he hit Elijah Moore. That was straight up arm talent.
Yeah.
Getting him the football. Like, you can see, man.
That looks like a good ball. 100%.
If this kid can fix what's between here, he could be so fucking good.
And I think that's the play I want to bitch about, because why the fuck, with 45 seconds left in all 3 of your timeouts, is that not the first timeout They did not call their first timeout until after 30 seconds on the clock. When you're out here tossing, you're not even past half field yet. You're out here tossing deep balls that are going to result in incompletions and stopping the clock themselves. And now you're kicking a 58-yard field goal with a timeout in your pocket. You don't get points for timeouts in your pocket. I think that was awful clock management by Saleh or whoever he lets run the clock for him. And that's something that needs to be addressed. And I would have liked to have seen Zach Wilson call a timeout and get yelled at for it in that situation instead of trying to run these guys to the line and running bad plays with 45 seconds on the clock. They killed so much time. I was so angry. And I've been joking with Marlia, and I've been telling you guys, like, I'm becoming a Jets fan. And so I told Marlia, as a lifelong Jets fan, I was so upset by that play calling yesterday. And Marlia went in and looked it up. Apparently they call their green Gotham green. And Marlia was like, you have to say, as a lifelong Jets fan that bleeds Gotham green. That was just such a bad play call. And like, I feel bad for Zach Wilson. And I love what you put in the notes, that if this kid could get his head right, but is there a worse place to get your head right than the New York Jets with just the specter of Sam Darnold and fucking Mark Sanchez and these guys just hanging over your head? It's such a bad situation, and I hope he can. I didn't like him at the draft. I really don't like him now, but I'd like to see him play good football as a lifelong Jets fan. So
I love that.
And then I love your next guy as well, Thibodeau, man. Interesting.
Dude. I loved watching this kid in college. Like, you want to talk about somebody.
Yeah, you talked him up.
Dude is so fucking good at rushing the passer. I think he was better than Trayvon Walker, who went 1. I think he has more natural talent than Aiden Hutchinson, who went 2. I think there's a lot to be said for what Aiden Hutchinson brings outside of the actual football field that maybe other players maybe don't have. But yeah, Thibodeau is so fucking talented. And just the first, I mean, really all game, but the first quarter of this game was just all up in Taylor Heineke's face. Like, yes. Holy shit. Like, why do I have to face this guy twice a year as an Eagles fan? I mean, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we have arguably the 2 best bookend tackles in Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson.
You're going to need them.
But, like, fuck, I don't want to see this guy twice a year for the next 10 plus years. Like, god damn. But yeah, dude was just like, and it's just one of these things where, you know, lacked competitive fire was a reason that he slipped in the draft.
Well, it's the Micah Parsons thing. There was like locker room questions. Like, you guys are so dumb.
These people just create these narratives. And I don't know if it's the agents that are trying to talk higher up teams from passing on their guy to try to get him in a better situation. To
fall to the Dallas Cowboys.
or if it's like, you know, the Giants are leaking this info so that he slips and falls to them. Like,
interesting.
It's just like, and I get it, you know, rumor mill season in the draft, you're always going to have these takes and the media is always going to drum up stuff for stories. But like, fuck, this dude is good, man. Like, he is so fucking good. And if I was an Eagles fan, I would love to watch him play more than I'd like watching him play right now.
Yeah, it makes it rough when good players end up on the opposite team of the division.
Yeah, it sucks. That's why it's hard for me to root for CeeDee Lamb. He was my favorite wide receiver coming out a couple of years ago, and then he lands in Dallas because we couldn't trade up to get him. And I'm just like,
I love the draft fights that the Eagles and Dallas have been having too, because there's the infamous like that the Dallas Goedert was going to fall to Dallas, and then you guys traded up and get him 1 pick ahead, and I love that kind of shit. So
yep.
And you got Justin Fields on here as an honorable.
Yeah, this is my honorable mention. Look, I feel like we've talked about Fields ad nauseum for weeks now.
Weeks.
He missed the game. Had a slow start to the season. I believe over the first 5 games, he averaged 36 rushing yards per game.
We were just begging for him to start running the football.
Yeah, and that like this was between our like rankers and everybody within the club fantasy family. This was the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
What can Fields do on the ground? Because we know, athletically speaking, he could run for 1,500 yards a year.
Yep.
As a quarterback, he has that type of rushing upside from a talent perspective. I don't think he cleared 500 rushing yards in a season at Ohio State.
Yeah. He also
Like,
did not have
he
more than
wants
50 yards in a game until
Yeah.
week 6.
And I get it, they have better weapons, they have, receivers, blah, 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 they had a good offensive line, so he didn't have to scramble. But, like, when you see, and you even saw it his rookie year, like, he wants to sit in the pocket and throw. Like, that is what he wants to do. Now he's being forced to, like, look, I have to run the football, otherwise we can't move this team.
Yeah.
Like, this offense can't move. He is currently sitting at exactly 1,000 yards rushing. He needs 206 rushing yards over the next 3 games to best the single season rushing record for a quarterback that Lamar Jackson set. I believe it was his MVP season. The way that he's been running the football lately, do we think he's hitting that? Because I do.
Without a doubt. Like, first of all, if you think that someone who's been through what Justin Fields has been through doesn't see this opportunity to get his name in the record books, not once, but twice in one season for a single game and now single season, damn well.
Well,
Justin
and that's the thing
Fields.
is like, and I always tend to, I tend to get on players that, try to voice these like, yeah, I want this record, I want that record, blah, 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 because it just feels very selfish. But when the Bears are sitting at the number 2 pick in the NFL draft at this moment, what else are you playing for outside of individual records? Like,
exactly.
Because those individual records are probably setting your team up for a chance to win. So, I mean, if he was talking about this and they were like fighting for a playoff spot, I would really have a problem with it. Because why
aren't you focused on the playoff spot?
Exactly. And I know that Fields' answer would be, we're trying to win games, because that's what it's been throughout this entire season. He's been a team-first guy, and that's one thing that I respect about it because of the turmoil that the Bears have faced this year. But, like, I'm okay with this right now. I really am. Like, you know what? Go get that record, homie, because you're setting yourself up for this Bears team to have a really good offseason to put the pieces in play for you the same way the Eagles did for Jalen Hurts. Go get it. I'm rooting
100%. Czar, I'm taking a fat fucking L on this one because this.
I would like to point out that I was on the Fields over Herbert bandwagon.
And
we
not
got that
mention,
question repeatedly on Saturday.
Well, you got it from us on Wednesday, and I think it was Czar on Wednesday where I argued on the passing, obviously, but you said something, Josh, that cannot be denied. You said if Fields gets 60 rushing yards, that's a 6.4 to stop. Justin Herbert,
and he's averaging a rushing touchdown a game.
And Justin Herbert got 8 fantasy points. So big L here. Obviously, Josh hit a nail on a head that we all have to remember in fantasy. And we preach this, and I forgot it. The rushing floor cannot be denied, and Herbert does not have it. Obviously, you don't expect 0 passing touchdowns against the worst defense in fantasy football.
Mind you, this is the first time the Titans have allowed 0 passing touchdowns in a game. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. I'm just going to lead right into this one before I talk a little bit about Marquise Goodwin. Justin Fields over Joe Burrow next week.
Let me pull up the schedule.
Because, man, is it hard.
I'm too emotional right now, George. You can't ask me fantasy questions right now.
I don't feel like scrolling, but wasn't George also the one who said we can't doubt Joe Burrow anymore?
Yeah, right?
and then asked this question.
So the Bears play the Bills.
Yeah, and the Bengals.
Definitely don't love that. But like I said, I mean.
The Bengals have the Pats on Christmas
Eve. The Bengals
Eve.
are at the Patriots. You know what? See, to me, this question is closer than Herbert and Fields.
Oh, certainly.
Because to me,
well, Herbert
and I said this, there's like 4 to 5 quarterbacks that I would start over Fields, and I've put Burrow on that fringe. Yeah. Like, I still would go Fields just because of the rushing upside, because that cannot be denied. But Burrow right now is a pretty consistent 300 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like, and Herbert is not that, and he hasn't been that. So, like, I'm gonna side with Fields, but George, do me a favor. Ask me again Wednesday.
Yeah. I'm gonna side with Burrow because I don't learn from my mistakes. Yeah, please come back Wednesday. Let me dig in a little bit and see how I feel about that. All right. As usual, we're hella over because the show is just too much fun. But Marquise Goodwin is my guy who I have the tingly feeling for. Tyler Lockett has had a very quiet top 10 wide receiver season. And Marquise Goodwin is not Tyler Lockett. Huh?
And now Lockett's out.
Yep. And Marquise Goodwin is not Tyler Lockett, but Tyler Lockett ain't playing football anymore for fantasy football this season, probably at all this season. DK Metcalf is going to lead this team, but Marquise Goodwin is the guy. The next receiver on this team has fewer than 20 targets, if I remember correctly. It's like not good. Nobody is stepping up but Marquise Goodwin. You might see the tight ends get more involved, but Marquise Goodwin is a guy who's out there on far too many waiver wires for what's going to be available coming up this season. Seattle still needs to win football games, so go get Marquise Goodwin. I think it's going to be a really, really good situation he's going to find himself in with Tyler Lockett out. And now it's time for chill the fuck out. Basically, we are going to tell you the guys who will either overperform, underperform. Let's not freak out. Let's not get too excited. I kind of went with the future here as well a little bit on Josh, the way you did on the last one. So I'm going to let you get started, and then I'll talk about my guy. So go right ahead.
Well, I'm going to start with Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
Because I know that, we hyped up and we talked about, how excited we were. We wanted to see this kid. And look, it was his first fucking start. If this were week 1, would you be saying, oh, this is what you get for wanting Desmond Ridder? No. And I saw people doing this.
They're
on
ready
Twitter.
To bury him.
Like,
already.
This is what you wanted. And I'm like, it's his first fucking start. Did you really think he was going to come in, throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on an actually good defense? On
a good defense and on a team that doesn't want to pass the football.
Exactly. Like, it wasn't going to happen. He brought this team back. Like, I get it. 50% completion, 97 passing yards, 38 rushing yards, no touchdowns. Okay, cool. You know why we were excited for Desmond Ridder? Because he was going to throw the fucking football to Drake London.
Hey, guess
11 targets to Drake London. 48, I believe it was a 40, 45, 40, like somewhere, 40,
high 40s.
40+% target share.
Yeah.
That's what I want for the number 1 wide receiver in this offense.
Yes.
And he delivered. London has 14 points without that fumble.
Yep.
Like, give me that. If you sprinkle in a touchdown every week, gold. Because Mariota wasn't doing it. Desmond Ridder's doing it. So, all about it. Let's be a little patient. Again, not 100% privy to how Atlanta finishes this season. They're probably going to lose a lot of games. And I know I took my L on my upsides on Wednesday's show because I called for, Ridder and the Falcons to win. But you know what? They lost by 3 points, and I will take that. That's a moral victory for me when in a league where there's no moral victories.
I think it was this show, actually, and I think it was this segment where I said, don't give up on these Atlanta running backs yet. And Tyler
look at Tyler Algier.
Patterson both had
exactly. And that's the thing. Like, you have these, mobile athletic quarterbacks, and we said this coming into the draft, like, to pair Desmond Ridder with Marcus Mariota was synergy. They have very similar play styles. Me personally, I think that Ridder's a better passer than Mariota. And I think as he progresses and matures throughout these final, 3 games?
Yeah.
We'll start to see that. I don't know that they're going to give him the chance in year 2, the same way that Houston gave Davis Mills the chance. But you know what? So be it. Let him go out there, let him compete, because the way that it's looking right now, Atlanta's not going to be in a position to get, that number 1 quarterback unless they try to make a trade up with, a Chicago or a Seattle, which could very well happen. I'm not saying that it can't, but let's pump the brakes a little. Okay.
I like it.
Let's pump the brakes. My next one, I'm going to shout out Zonovan Knight because again, I'm a fan. I love this kid. He's played great.
But you got a good read.
I'm going to enjoy this ride because he's going to fall back into like a backup role when Breece Hall comes back next year.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I've been banging the drum on the Detroit Lions run defense for the better part of a month and a half now, and people still seem to want to stick to, they've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs on the season. What you've done over 14 weeks is not the same as what you've done over the last 6 or 7.
Exactly.
So start paying more attention to that. And if you need tools to help you with that, I'm going to give them a shout out. Go to the 33rdteam.com and use the Edge tool because it's absolutely fantastic. It's very customizable, and you can fine tune it to work at, I need to look at the last 4 weeks, or I need to look at since week 7.
And it's
10 or
free
whatever.
this season.
And it's free right now.
And it's likely not going to be next season. So go see how useful it is right now. So
because that's going to change potentially, and it'll help you. And great tool, and I love it. But look, next week, the Jets play the Jags, and the week after that, they play the Seahawks. Those are 2 very good running back matchups. So if you happen to have taken my advice and sat Zonovan Knight and somehow played yourself into the semifinals, or you started him and still survived, be happy, because these next 2 weeks you will get paid off. These are matchups that they can exploit. So yes, we're going to chill the fuck out on Zonovan Knight. My last one, this is more for the future. I'm going to put the Miami Dolphins as a team. I fucking love Mike McDaniel. This dude has a calm, like, not cocky swagger. He's just fun. He's relatable.
Amazing.
Honestly, it looks like a guy won a Madden championship and said, you know what? I want a ticket to like run the Dolphins right now. And they just said, you know what? We like this. You can keep the job. You can stay here, whatever. Like, that, honest to God, is what he looks like. And the dude is calling some fucking fantastic plays. And it helps that he has 3 of the fastest people on any offense in the NFL, and Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Raheem Mostert.
Yep.
They beat the Bills earlier this year. They took them down to the second, really, in this last game in Buffalo, where we know that Dolphins don't do well in the cold, but apparently Penguins do.
Yeah.
I had to get the little Waddle joke. I love this shit.
Waddle.
I still think they're a year away. They can make some noise in the playoffs, but I don't think right now they're ready to be up there with the Cincy's.
There's still some things they need to address on their defense.
And that defense, they need a whole new defensive coordinator. That play calling is very sus. But they need to fix that secondary, because outside of Javon Holland and on good weeks, Xavier Howard, they're not great. Byron Jones has not played to the contract that he's making right now. And he's been hurt a lot this year too. So
exactly.
But yeah.
For my 2, I was torn. I didn't even know how I wanted to go about this segment, because normally I have like a guy who is really good and is not that good, and is really bad and is not that bad. I'm going to start with T. Higgins, and we talked about this earlier in the show. There's a lot to chill out about with T. Higgins. So first of all, I'm going to catch shit for telling people to bench him. If you look at the box score, other than the touchdown and 2-point conversion, my man had 33 yards, and you were seconds away from a 3-point performance in a standard league and a 7-point performance in a PPR league. It was not great. The touchdown saved his day. But also, I think we need to pay a lot more attention to injury reports. And obviously last week burned us. I don't know that we need to just freak out about these injuries, especially when he did get essentially 2 weeks to sit. So that's something I have been steadfast against, these questionable tags and starting them and avoiding them if possible. And then maybe I need to chill out a little bit on that. And along those same kind of lines as like T. Higgins, but not the injury thing, Chris Olave, we were ready to just call this guy the greatest rookie wide receiver in the world after week 7. He had 4 straight games over 15 fantasy points, and we just thought he was going to be it. Since then, he has had 1 game over 15 fantasy points. And what I found interesting, so it was like weeks 4 through 7 that he put up, I think it was 81 fantasy points. Since then, he has only put up, it's 71. And since then, he's only put up 80 fantasy points in all of the games since then. So he's only scored 9 more points in his last 7 than he did in his last 4 in that 4-game span. It was not very pretty what we're seeing out of Chris Olave. However, you can blame the quarterback, but is the quarterback going to improve with the bad situation? So I guess what I'm getting at with Chris Olave is I don't think he's the every week start we were treating him as earlier this season. And way more importantly, I don't know that we should be riding as high as we saw going into him in his second year, because I don't know that the New Orleans Saints can address their quarterback situation. And just to give a shout out back to George, they cut Ian Book. He's like the practice squad quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles now. Like, they don't have a third quarterback on roster right now.
Taysom Hill, who threw a touchdown pass this week.
There you go. And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe you just give the guy the reins. But it's not a great situation, and I was very high on Chris Olave. I had a wonderful rookie draft this year where I walked away with Wilson, Olave, and Jahan Dotson. And I thought I was going to be just super set up. I can start 4 wide receivers. I don't feel like I can just plug and play Chris Olave at this point. And certainly this season, I've already benched him for next week. Certainly this season, next season, I'm even a little bit more worried. So I think in general, we just need to chill out on Chris Olave.
I agree.
Before we get into the deep waiver segment where I have to defend some of these really ugly names, I'm going to tell you, Josh, let's talk about something that's not really ugly. Let's tell these people about this great deal we have with Manscaped.
Yeah, so Club Fantasy's Monday Hangxiety, sponsored by Manscaped. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the ultimate men's hygiene bundle, the Performance Package. Luckily, Ryan and myself were gifted this Performance Package so that we could talk about it and hype it up and actually give you all some honest feedback. And I don't have anything bad to say about it. I really don't. The Performance Package itself includes the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver groin deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, the Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all those goodies. And that travel bag looks like it came from fucking Gucci. It's fantastic.
Like Italian leather.
Yeah, it's really is. It's I was really impressed just with the packaging. Like the presentation of it and opening it and everything else.
That's what I was gonna say, Josh. We get shit when we talk about giving this as a gift because it is a little weird that you're giving like ball trimmers for someone as a gift. But when they open this thing, they're going to be impressed. It is super cool. So.
Agreed. Yeah, it's fantastic. Join over 5 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer just for you. Head over to manscaped.com, pick out everything that you want to buy. Use the promo code Club Fantasy at checkout and save 20% off of your entire purchase and free shipping included. So once again, go to manscaped.com, use promo code Club Fantasy at checkout, save 20%, get free shipping at manscaped.com.
Love it. Deep waivers. If you guys have not followed the show, deep waivers are guys who are available in more than 90% of leagues. Looking at ESPN's rankings, I'm going to start with Deion Jackson. So we had a question earlier in the show. I'm going to go back and bring it up. Are we looking at Zach Moss and Deion Jackson? We absolutely have to. Starting running backs are not easy to find. I think they're going to end up leaning on Deion Jackson, but they may want to see what they have in Zach Moss too. That was a mid-season trade, so they're going to have to figure some things out there. So either one of those guys. This is a tough segment. When I write my waiver article tonight, I am not going to suggest players that I don't feel comfortable telling you to start. And next week's game is the most important game of your season to this point. Am I willing to start Deion Jackson or Zach Moss? I would say more Deion Jackson than I am Zach Moss because we have seen Deion Jackson.
I was about to ask you that question because remember, Deion Jackson was running and doing the things he was doing before Jeff Saturday got there. And when you look back at the snap counts from this game, Zach Moss played 53 snaps to Deion Jackson's 25.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And Zach Moss doubled him up in carries basically and had the I mean,
Deion Jackson had more fantasy points from a PPR perspective. Well, he scored the touchdown, but he's also used more in the receiving game. Like all of Zach Moss's points were on the running game.
But to be fair, they both only had one target. So you know what? Maybe I need to backpedal. This is me. This is a version of Take Lock. I knew what Deion Jackson was pre-Jeff Saturday. So it's a really good point, Josh. So maybe it is Zach Moss. But both of them are worth a look in waivers, and they're both startable assets because of the fact that you just don't know what's going to happen at running back.
Well, and then keep in mind, too, they play the Chargers.
Exactly.
Have a really bad run defense on Monday night.
Yep.
So next Monday night, excuse me.
Absolutely. Next one's going to be Marlon Mack. Similar situation. The Broncos are spreading the ball around. They want to see what they have at quarterback or at running back rather. Latavius Murray is Latavius Murray. Marlon Mack's Marlon Mack. But the fact of the matter is this: they can't throw the fucking football, so they are going to need to run. Marlon Mack is going to see the kind of volume you want. And yes, he does feel like a startable asset. I believe he has scored double-digit fantasy points in each of their last 2 games. So next is going to be KJ Osborne. Josh kind of brought about this. And this kind of goes back to the Evan Ingram thing. You're not going to get week 15 KJ Osborne again, but the week before he caught all 5 of his targets and scored a touchdown. This offense is working by keeping KJ Osborne involved. I think we're going to see a little bit more 3 wide receiver sets.
They do play the Giants on Christmas Eve. So.
And they play the Giants, and I had it up because their next game isn't bad either. Oh, it's the Packers, who we just talked about, give up points to multiple wide receivers in the same game. And that's big when you're dealing with this. You got to hope it's going to be Osborne instead of Adam Thielen because you know Justin Jefferson's going to get his. Chigoziem Okonkwo, if you're looking at tight end, they continue to use this kid. They have absolutely no wide receivers. It doesn't matter to me who the quarterback's going to be. They're using him on running plays the way they were Jonnu Smith. They straight up lined him up as a running back in the red zone at one point this past week. Those are the kind of touches that are the most invaluable things you could ever
I do want to point out, because I had Okonkwo as one of my upside plays this week. I said top 7. He didn't finish top 7, but he scored 10 fantasy points. So while I get the L on the show sheet, it's still a win because that's what we look for.
If you started him, you are ecstatic. Exactly. And like I said, a red zone carry is exactly what you're looking for. And my final one is an insurance policy, and that's Pierre Strong. Ramondre Stevenson looked like a fucking beast, but you're still dealing with an ankle and foot injury, not necessarily a foot, but a lower leg injury. Pierre Strong was targeted 3 times in the passing game. If Ramondre Stevenson goes down, you want Pierre Strong. Every Ramondre Stevenson owner who is in the next round of the playoffs better be adding Pierre Strong this week because you need that insurance policy if you make it to the fantasy championship. So those are my deep waivers, all available in more than 90% of fantasy leagues. According to ESPN, we are going to end the show as we always end the show. Josh, talk to the people and tell them what you think about Monday Night Football.
Fuck Aaron Rodgers. Go Baker Mayfield. I need some more magic from this past Thursday. That's my answer.
I'm going to go the exact well, not the exact opposite because it is fuck Aaron Rodgers, but it's fuck Baker Mayfield too. I'm sorry for anybody who needs fantasy points tonight. I hope you have the kickers. I am hoping for 15 to 12 all kickers. I can't have Allen Lazard and Baker Mayfield. I have a league where I went undefeated. We do double headers to match the NFL, 17-0. And if Aaron Rodgers and Allen Lazard go off tonight, I get bounced in my very first playoff game, and I cannot have that happen.
I need Aaron Jones to have quite literally 8 yards total or less.
Oh,
and no catches. That's what I need.
A good game out of Aaron Jones. I actually do need a good game out of Aaron Jones because I'm going to end the show with this wonderful story. In the Club Dynasty, the OG Club Dynasty Fantasy League, where I came in and won a championship my first year and kind of sucked last year, but still made the playoffs. This year, I'm going up against Joe Zolo in the playoffs, whose team name is literally I Hate Dynasty because this team
got in on really just like a tanking team, tanking to allow him in, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. Joe thought he was tanking, but he got out tanked and made the playoffs. He is about to knock me out of the fucking playoffs if Aaron Jones.
You need what, like 18 points from Aaron Jones or something?
18 fantasy points,
and he started Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. My team choked. Guess who my quarterback was? Justin Herbert, you bastard. So I am predicting 15 to 12, all field goals. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry for everybody who needs points from Baker and Allen Lazard, but I'm rooting against you mightily. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. As I point out every week, we don't even mind going over. This show is fun, and it's fun because of your participation. Make sure you hit subscribe if you have not yet. We'd love to have you as a part of our club, but more importantly, you're going to be entered into drawings to win autographed merchandise. The second we cross 500 followers on YouTube, we're going to be giving away your choice of an autographed jersey. Josh, I still don't have these remembered, so if you do.
Stephon Diggs, Buffalo Bills jersey, Nick Chubb signed Browns jersey, or a Mark Andrews signed Ravens mini helmet.
There you go. So you're going to get your choice. We're going to put you guys into a drawing. We do the big wheel. We spin it on the show. You're going to see who wins, and hopefully it's one of you folks. We thank every single one of you.
12 more subscribers.
There you go.
12 more. That's it. So share it. Create burner accounts. I don't care. Let's get to 500 before the end of the year. I want to be able to spin this wheel. I believe we'll have our week 17 championship start sit show. I would love to go through and spin the wheel on that day. So we have
big show. It's our biggest show every year.
We're usually end up going over like 2 hours on that show.
Yeah, because everybody has their championship questions.
So little less than 2 weeks to get 12 subscribers. So tweet it, share the link on your socials, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. It's youtube.com/Club Fantasy FFL. Let's get to 500. Let's give away some free shit. Spending my money when I have none. I don't care.
There you go.
Let's do it.
Man just had to buy a new car. Let's spend some more of his money. As Josh pointed out, we go live every single Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern with some of the best guests in the industry. That is a show with no show sheet. All we do is answer your start sit questions every single Saturday at 11 a.m. We also go live every Wednesday. Normally, I would tell you that we do a great preview of the next week, and we still spend a lot of time answering your start sit questions. This Wednesday, we're just going to listen to Joe bitch about the Patriots for literally a half an hour.
Well, we'll still have some predictions and upside and downside picks, but
it's going to be a great show. I'm being facetious, but yeah. Thursday is one of my favorite days of the week because not only do we get an IDP show, but we also get the best start sit show in the entire industry with the Sneaky Girls, the Sneaky Flex, hosted by Kelly Singh. They bring Rowan and Maisie on. They answer your questions. They give you their favorite plays of the week. Rowan or Maisie, I forget who it was. I'm sorry. Quote of the week. If I say George Kittle is going to do good, George Kittle is going to do good.
She called George Kittle. Yep.
Make sure you're watching that show. I guarantee you will leave with a smile. I leave with a smile every single time I watch that show. We have articles dropping every single day of the week. As you all know, my waiver article drops tomorrow. The really good articles drop on the weekend with our start sits, our betting, our prop bet articles. Just make sure you guys are following Club Fantasy on all the socials at Club Fantasy FFL. Always remember that defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy, and backup running backs are supposed to be more efficient. Have a great Monday, everybody.